The colony world of Velaris Prime had been burning for 3 days straight. Smoke rose from the cities like dark fingers reaching toward the sky. The beautiful green fields that once fed millions were now blackened wastelands. The peaceful world that had known nothing but happiness for centuries was dying. Ambassador Lyris stood in the underground bunker beneath the capital city. Her pale blue skin flickered with weak light as fear ran through her body. The Novan people communicated emotions through the glow of their skin, and right now, every survivor in the bunker was dim with terror. She was old by her people's standards. She had served as a diplomat for over 200 years. She had negotiated trade deals with dozens of species across the galaxy. She had helped build alliances and friendships that spanned star systems, but nothing in her long life had prepared her for this. The Krath swarm had come without warning. 3 days ago, the sky had turned dark as millions of organic ships descended upon Velaris Prime. The Krath were an ancient species of insect-like predators. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They did not make peace. They simply consumed. World after world fell to their hunger, and now it was the Novan's turn. Lyris pressed her thin fingers against the emergency transmitter. It was their last hope. The Novan had no military. They had no weapons. They were farmers and traders who had never needed to fight because they had always believed in the goodness of others. That belief now seemed foolish as their world burned above them. "This is Ambassador Lyris of the Novan Collective," she spoke into the device. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "This is a priority distress call to all allied species. Velaris Prime is under attack. The Krath swarm has breached our orbital defenses. They have destroyed our cities. They are hunting our people in the streets." She paused and looked at the frightened faces around her. Children clung to their parents. Elderly Novans sat in silence, accepting their fate. Young ones tried to be brave but failed. "Estimated civilian casualties are 40 million, Lyris continued. "The number is rising every hour. We have no weapons. We have no ships capable of fighting. We are begging for help, please. Anyone. If you can hear this message, we need you." She released the transmitter and waited. The first response came from the Oran Dominion. The feathered species had been trading partners with the Novan for generations. "Ambassador Lyris, we grieve for your people. Our fleet is currently engaged on the other side of the galaxy. We cannot reach you in time. We are sorry." The second response came from the Bell Consortium. The crystalline beings had always been friendly neighbors. "Velaris Prime, we hear your call. However, our weapons cannot penetrate Krath armor. We would only add to the death count. We advise evacuation if possible." Evacuation. Lyris almost laughed at the word. The Krath had surrounded the planet. No ship could leave without being destroyed. There was no evacuation. There was only death. More responses came. Some offered prayers. Some offered sympathy. None offered help. The galaxy, it seemed, was too afraid of the Krath to intervene. Species that had once called themselves allies now turned away. Lyris felt her hope dying with each passing minute. Then a new signal cut through the static. "This is Admiral Park Tiho of the United Earth Navy vessel Eternal Soul. We heard your call." The bunker fell completely silent. Every Novan turned to look at the transmitter as if it had suddenly grown teeth. Lyris felt her blood run cold. "Humans." She had never met one in person, but she knew the stories. Everyone in the galaxy knew the stories. Humans came from a planet called Earth, a world so dangerous that scientists classified it as a death world. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The animals were predators. Even the plants could kill. Most species looked at Earth and wondered how anything could survive there. The fact that humans not only survived but thrived was considered either a miracle or a horror, depending on who was telling the story. Humans were strong. Humans were fast. Humans could survive injuries that would kill any other species. They could eat foods that were poison to others. They could function in extreme heat and extreme cold. They healed from wounds that should have been fatal. They kept fighting long after any reasonable creature would have given up. And they were violent. Their history was filled with wars. They had spent thousands of years fighting each other before they finally united and reached for the stars. Some species believed that humans were the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Others believed they were simply insane. Most civilized species avoided them. Admiral Lyris managed to respond, her voice barely a whisper. Velaris Prime is beyond saving. The Krath number in the hundreds of thousands. Their bioships fill our sky. Their warriors walk our streets. Why would you come here? Why would you risk your people for us? There was a pause. Lyris could hear background noise through the transmission, orders being given, systems being activated, the sounds of a warship preparing for battle. "Ambassador," the human admiral finally replied, "how long can your people hold out?" Lyris looked around the bunker. The supplies were running low. The Krath were searching building by building for survivors. The other bunkers had already gone silent one by one. "Days," she said honestly, "perhaps hours." "Then we will be there in hours," Admiral Park said. His voice was calm. It was the kind of calm that came from absolute certainty. "Tell your people to hold on. Tell them help is coming." "Admiral, please," Lyris tried again. "I must understand. The Krath have destroyed entire civilizations. They have consumed hundreds of worlds. Your fleet, no matter how powerful, cannot possibly stand against their numbers. You will be throwing away the lives of your soldiers for strangers you have never met. Why would you do this?" The response came without hesitation. "Because you called for help," Admiral Park said simply, "and humans answer." The transmission ended. Lyris stood frozen for a long moment. Around her, the Novan survivors began to whisper. Some were hopeful, others were skeptical. A few were terrified at the idea of Deathworlders coming to their planet. "What do we do?" asked one of her aides, a young Novan named Salir. Lyris thought about the human's words. There had been no negotiation, no discussion of payment or reward, no strategic calculation, just a simple statement of fact. "You called for help, we answer." She had spent her entire career dealing with species that only acted in their own self-interest. Every alliance was built on mutual benefit. Every friendship had conditions. The galaxy ran on the exchange of goods and favors. But the humans had not asked for anything in return. "We wait," Lyris finally said. "We wait and we hope that the stories about humans are true." Above them, the city continued to burn. The Krath warriors continued their hunt. The clock continued to tick toward extinction. But somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a fleet of ships crewed by the children of a death world was racing toward Velaris Prime. They did not come for profit. They did not come for power. They came because someone had called for help, and that was reason enough. The Novan had spent their entire existence believing in peace and kindness. They had built their civilization on the idea that violence was never the answer. Now they waited for salvation in the form of the most violent species the galaxy had ever known. It was strange, Lyris thought, how the universe worked. Sometimes the only thing that could stop a monster was an even bigger monster, and humanity had spent millions of years becoming exactly that. The hours began to pass. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of the destroyer Iron Hana and watched the stars stretch into lines as the ship prepared to jump. The display in front of her showed the coordinates for Velaris Prime. The distance was enormous. Under normal circumstances, it would take days to travel so far. But these were not normal circumstances. Admiral Park Tiho had given the order 30 minutes ago. Every ship in the Third Fleet was now pushing their engines beyond safe limits. They were going to burn out half their jump drives to make this trip. The engineers were already complaining. Yuna did not care. She had seen the distress call. She had heard the fear in the alien ambassador's voice. The Novan were dying. That was all that mattered. Yuna was 34 years old. She had been born on Mars, raised in the military academies of Earth, and had spent the last decade fighting pirates and protecting trade routes. She had never faced anything like the Krath swarm before. None of them had, but she had studied the reports. She had seen the images of consumed worlds. She knew what they were flying toward. Jump drives at 115% capacity, reported Lieutenant Dohun from the tactical station. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and steady hands. He had been Yuna's second in command for 3 years. Engineering says we will need a full overhaul after this jump. The cores are already showing stress fractures. Noted, Yuna replied. Weapon status. All plasma cannons charged. Missile tubes loaded. Point defense grid at full power. Dohun paused. Captain, the crew is ready. Whatever is waiting for us on the other side, we will face it. Yuna nodded. She looked around the bridge at her crew. Ensign Bora sat at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. She was young, only 22, but she could fly a destroyer through an asteroid field blindfolded. Communications Officer Hana monitored the fleet-wide channels. Weapons Officer Kang ran final checks on the targeting systems. These were her people, her family, and she was about to lead them into the biggest battle of their lives. The fleet-wide channel crackled to life. All ships, this is Admiral Park Tiho. Yuna straightened in her chair. Every crew member on every ship in the fleet stopped what they were doing to listen. In a few minutes, we will jump to Velaris Prime. What we find there will not be pleasant. The Krath swarm has spent 3 days killing innocent people. Farmers, teachers, children. The Novan have no weapons. They have no soldiers. They trusted the galaxy to be kind, and the galaxy failed them. The Admiral's voice was steady and strong. It carried the weight of command and the fire of conviction. The Krath believe they are predators. They believe they are the top of the food chain. They have spent centuries devouring species weaker than themselves. They have never met humans before. They do not know what a death world produces. They do not know what we are capable of. Yuna felt her heart beating faster. Around her, the crew was completely still. Today, we teach them. Today, we remind the galaxy why they whisper about Earth, why they tell their children stories about humans to frighten them at night. We are not here for glory. We are not here for conquest. We are here because someone called for help, and we are the only ones who answered. The Admiral paused. All ships prepare to jump. For Earth, for humanity, for everyone who has ever been abandoned in their darkest hour. Let us show the Krath what happens when you threaten the weak in front of the strong. The channel closed. Jump in 30 seconds, Ensign Bora announced. Yuna gripped the armrests of her command chair. The stars outside the viewport began to blur as the jump drive activated. Reality twisted. Space folded. For a single moment, the ship existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Then they emerged above Velaris Prime. And the world was burning. Yuna's breath caught in her throat. The planet below was covered in smoke and fire. Great swaths of the surface glowed orange with destruction. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what filled the space between the fleet and the planet. The Krath swarm. Thousands of organic ships hung in orbit like a swarm of insects. Each one was a living creature, grown rather than built. Their hulls were made of chitin and bone. Their weapons were biological growths that could spit acid and fire organic missiles. Some were small, barely larger than fighters. Others were massive, bigger than any human dreadnought. At the center of the swarm was the Queen's flagship. It was a monster of a ship, pulsing with sickly green light. Tentacles extended from its hull like reaching arms. Eyes dotted its surface, all of them turning to look at the human fleet. Contact count, Dohun said, his voice tight. Over 3,000 Krath vessels, multiple hive ships, 1 mega-class flagship. And we have 217 ships, Yuna replied. Outnumbered 15 to 1. I have seen worse odds. A new transmission came through. It was not from the Admiral, it was from the Krath. The Queen's voice filled the bridge. It was a horrible sound, clicking and hissing, full of hunger and contempt. The translator converted it to words, but nothing could hide the alien malice behind them. More prey arrives, good, the swarm hungers. We have tasted the soft ones on this world. Their flesh is sweet but weak, and now you bring us more. We do not know your kind, but we see your ships are made of dead metal. You are not like us. You are fragile, you are food. Admiral Park's response came immediately. This is Admiral Park Teho of the United Earth Navy. I give you one warning. Withdraw from this system immediately, or we will destroy you. The Krath Queen laughed. It was a terrible sound, like bones breaking. You threaten the swarm that has consumed 100 worlds, the swarm that has exterminated species older than your entire civilization. You are nothing. You are meat. You are already dead. You talk too much, the Admiral said calmly. All ships open fire. The human fleet attacked. Yuna watched as the Eternal Soul, the Admiral's flagship, unleashed its main weapon. The plasma lance was a beam of captured starfire, hot enough to melt through anything. It struck the nearest Krath hive ship and burned straight through. The organic vessel screamed as it died, a sound that echoed across all frequencies. Then chaos erupted. The human ships spread into attack formation, each one finding targets and firing. Plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Missiles streaked toward enemy vessels. Point defense systems created walls of fire to block incoming organic projectiles. Helm, bring us around to bearing 270, Yuna ordered. Weapons, target the destroyer-class Krath on our port side. Fire at will. The Iron Hana moved like a dancer, sliding between enemy fire and returning destruction with every weapon it had. Ensign Bora pushed the engines hard, spinning and diving through the battlefield with impossible grace. Lieutenant Dohan called out targets and coordinated fire with the efficiency of a machine. The Krath fought back hard. Their numbers were overwhelming. For every ship the humans destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place. Organic missiles slammed into human vessels. Acid sprays ate through armor. Boarding pods launched toward the fleet, carrying Krath warriors ready to tear through human crews with tooth and claw. But the humans did not break. They did not retreat. They fought like demons, each ship covering the others, coordinating attacks with precision that the Krath could not match. The swarm was used to fighting prey that ran or prey that froze. They were not used to prey that hunted back. The Krath are confused, Dohan reported, a hint of grim satisfaction in his voice. Their formation is breaking. They do not understand why we are not retreating. Good, Yuna said. Let them wonder. Bring us around for another pass. Focus fire on the hive ship at coordinates 742. The battle raged on. The human fleet pushed deeper into the swarm, carving a path of destruction through the organic vessels. Fires burned in space. Ships died on both sides. But with every passing minute, it became clearer who was winning. The Krath had numbers. The humans had skill, technology, and something else. Something the swarm had never encountered before. The will to fight not for survival, not for hunger, but for strangers they had never met. The willingness to die so that others might live. It was a concept the Krath could not understand, and it was going to cost them everything. In the bunker below, Ambassador Lyris watched the battle on a damaged monitor. Her skin glowed bright with hope for the first time in days. The Deathworlders had come, and they were winning. Lieutenant Jiho dropped from the transport ship before it even touched the ground. His boots hit the broken street hard, and he was already running before the dust settled. Behind him, 20 Marines followed in perfect formation. They moved like wolves hunting through the ruins of a city that had once been beautiful. Velaris Prime's capital was destroyed. Buildings had collapsed. Fires burned everywhere. The streets were covered with rubble and the bodies of Novan who had not escaped in time. The air smelled of smoke and something else, something organic and wrong, the smell of the Krath. "Squad, form up," Jiho ordered through his helmet radio. "We have reports of survivors in the eastern shelter. The Krath are moving to intercept. We get there first." Private Nari moved up beside him, her plasma rifle ready. She was small but fast, with eyes that missed nothing. She had grown up on a colony world where the native predators could turn invisible. She had learned to spot danger before danger spotted her. "Contact ahead," she said quietly. "3 Krath scouts 200 meters behind the collapsed building." Jiho raised his fist and the squad stopped. He studied the terrain. The Krath were blocking the direct path to the shelter. Going around would take too long. The survivors did not have that kind of time. "Nari, take Kang and flank left, the rest of you with me. We hit them hard and fast. No survivors." The Marines split into 2 groups. Jiho led his team forward, keeping low and using the rubble for cover. The Krath scouts were ugly creatures, standing on 8 legs with bodies covered in dark chitin. Their heads were full of compound eyes that saw in every direction. Their front limbs ended in curved blades that could cut through metal. They did not see the humans coming. Nari fired first. Her plasma bolt took the first Krath through the head and it dropped without a sound. The other 2 spun toward the attack, but Jiho's team was already on them. Private Song opened fire with his heavy weapon, and the second Krath exploded in a spray of green blood. The third tried to run, but Corporal Mina caught it with a precision shot to the spine. 3 seconds, 3 dead aliens, 0 human casualties. "Move," Jiho ordered, and the squad continued forward. The Krath were fast. They were strong. Their claws could tear through body armor, and their acid spit could melt flesh. But humans had spent millions of years evolving on a planet that tried to kill them every single day. They had hunted predators that were bigger and stronger. They had survived ice ages and volcanic eruptions. They had fought wars against each other with weapons that could destroy cities. The Krath were dangerous, humans were worse. The squad reached the shelter entrance 10 minutes later. The door had been sealed from the inside, but Krath warriors were trying to break through. There were 20 of them, maybe more, clawing at the metal barrier while the Novan inside screamed in terror. "Grenades first," Jiho said. "Then we finish them in close." The Marines threw plasma grenades into the Krath group. The explosions were bright and loud, sending pieces of chitin flying in every direction. Half the Krath died instantly. The rest turned to face the new threat, clicking and hissing with rage. Jiho met them head-on. He was not a large man by human standards. He was average height, average build, with a face that his mother always said was too serious. But he had been training for combat since he was 14 years old. He had survived jungle warfare training on Earth. He had passed the orbital drop qualification on Mars. He had earned every scar on his body in fights that should have killed him. The first Krath lunged at him with both blade arms raised. Jiho stepped to the side and fired his rifle point-blank into its chest. The alien fell, and he was already moving to the next one. Combat for him was not about strength or speed. It was about efficiency. Every movement had a purpose. Every action led to a result. Around him, his squad fought with the same brutal precision. Nari dropped 3 Krath in as many seconds, her shots hitting weak points in their armor that she had memorized during training. Kang used his heavy rifle to create a wall of suppressive fire. Song and Mina worked as a pair, covering each other's blind spots. But the Krath were not weak enemies. They fought back with terrible ferocity. A Krath Alpha emerged from the shadows. It was twice the size of the regular warriors, with a crown of horns on its head and armor thick enough to deflect plasma bolts. It moved with frightening speed, crossing the distance to Jiho in less than a second. Its blade caught his shoulder. The armor held barely, but the impact sent him spinning. He felt something crack. Pain exploded through his left side. The Alpha pressed the attack, driving him backward with a flurry of strikes that were almost too fast to follow. A normal soldier would have fallen. A normal soldier would have died. Jiho was not a normal soldier. He caught the Alpha's next strike on his rifle, using the weapon as a shield. The force drove him to his knees, but he did not fall. He twisted, using the Alpha's own momentum against it, and shoved the barrel of his rifle into the gap between its neck and shoulder. He fired. The Alpha screamed. Green blood sprayed across Jiho's armor, but the creature was not dead. It lashed out with its tail, catching Jiho across the chest and throwing him into a wall. More pain, more damage. He felt ribs breaking, his vision blurred. The Alpha moved in for the kill. And stopped. A plasma grenade was stuck to its chest. Jiho had placed it there during their exchange, without the creature even noticing. The Alpha looked down at the glowing device with something that might have been surprise. "Welcome to Earth," Jiho said and pressed the detonator. The explosion threw him backward again, but the Alpha was gone. Nothing remained but scattered pieces of chitin and a smoking crater. Nari appeared at his side, pulling him to his feet. "Sir, your injuries." "I am still standing," Jiho interrupted. "Is the shelter secure?" "The Krath are eliminated, all 20 confirmed kills." Jiho nodded and immediately regretted it as pain shot through his neck. He pushed the feeling aside. There would be time to hurt later. Right now, there were people who needed saving. He walked to the shelter door and knocked on the metal with his armored fist. "This is Lieutenant Jiho of the United Earth Marines. The Krath outside are dead. We are here to evacuate you to safety." For a long moment there was silence. Then slowly the door began to open. A Novan face appeared in the gap. It was a young one, barely an adult by their standards. Her skin was flickering with blue and orange light, a mix of hope and fear. She stared at Jiho like he was some kind of monster. To her, he probably was. Humans were the stuff of nightmares for most species. Stories of death world warriors who could survive anything, who kept fighting long after they should have died. Looking at Jiho now, covered in blood, both his and alien, with broken ribs and a destroyed shoulder, still standing and still ready to fight, she could believe every story was true. "You came," she whispered. "Yes," Jiho said simply, "we came." More Novan emerged from the shelter. Children first, then adults, then the elderly. There were nearly 200 of them, packed into a space meant for 50. They looked at the human Marines with a mixture of terror and wonder. "We will escort you to the evacuation point," Jiho announced. "Stay close to us. If you see any Krath, get behind the nearest Marine. Do not try to fight. Do not try to run. We will protect you." An elderly Novan approached him. His skin was dim, nearly colorless. He had given up hope and was only now beginning to find it again. "Why?" the old one asked. "Why did you come for us? We are nothing to your people." Jiho looked at the old Novan. He looked at the frightened children hiding behind their parents. He looked at the ruins of a city that had been peaceful until 3 days ago. "Because you needed help," he said. "That is enough." The evacuation began. The Marines formed a protective ring around the civilians and started moving toward the extraction point. More Krath would come. There would be more fighting, more pain, possibly more death. But Jiho and his squad would keep going. They would protect every single civilian until the mission was complete or until they could no longer stand. That was what humans did. That was what it meant to be from a death world. Not just the ability to survive, but the will to ensure others survived too. The space battle had been raging for 4 hours. The human fleet had pushed deep into the Krath swarm, destroying hundreds of organic vessels, but the cost was high. 31 human ships had been lost. Thousands of sailors were dead or wounded. The swarm, despite its losses, still outnumbered them badly. But the tide was turning. Captain Yuna stood on the bridge of the Iron Hana and watched the tactical display. The Krath formation had broken completely. They were no longer attacking with coordination but swarming in random patterns, confused and disorganized. Something was wrong with their command structure. "The Queen," she said quietly, "she is losing control of them." Lieutenant Dohun nodded. "The Krath operate through psychic links. The Queen gives orders and the swarm obeys, but our attacks have disrupted their communication. The smaller ships are acting on instinct now, not strategy. If we kill the Queen, the swarm falls apart completely." "That is the theory, Captain." Yuna looked at the center of the battlefield. The Queen's flagship still hung there, massive and terrible. It had not moved throughout the entire battle. Tentacles extended from its hull, and thousands of smaller vessels surrounded it like loyal guards. Getting close would be suicide. Getting inside would be impossible. Unless someone was crazy enough to try. Admiral Park's voice came through the command channel. "All ships, this is the Admiral. We have pushed the swarm to the breaking point. Now we finish this. I am ordering an assault on the Queen's flagship. We breach her hull, we board her vessel, and we kill her." A murmur ran through the fleet-wide channel. Boarding a Krath hive ship was considered one of the most dangerous military operations possible. The interior of their vessels was a nightmare of organic tunnels, acid pools, and warrior drones that knew every passage. "Captain Yuna," the Admiral continued, "you will lead the boarding assault. The Iron Hana has the best combat record in the fleet. Take your ship in close and punch a hole in that monster." Yuna felt her heart quicken, but her voice remained steady. "Understood, Admiral. It will be done." She closed the channel and turned to face her crew. Every eye on the bridge was focused on her. They knew what she was about to order. They knew how dangerous it would be. "You heard the Admiral," she said. "We are going to ram our ship into the side of that thing, breach its hull, and kill everything inside. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship has 60 seconds to reach the escape pods." No one moved. Ensign Bora smiled from the helm station. "Captain, if you think I am going to miss the chance to fly through a living creature, you do not know me at all." Lieutenant Dohun checked his sidearm. "Someone needs to watch your back in there. Might as well be me." The rest of the crew nodded in agreement. Communications Officer Hana, Weapons Officer Kang, the engineers, the damage control teams, every single person stayed at their station. Yuna felt a surge of pride so strong it almost hurt. These were her people, her family. "Then let us go kill a queen," she said. "Helm, set course for the flagship. Maximum speed. Weapons, charge the forward plasma lance. We are going to burn our way inside." The Iron Hana turned toward the massive organic vessel and accelerated. Krath defenders moved to intercept, but the human escort ships formed a protective screen. The destroyers Brave Minu and Silver Sara took positions on either side, their weapons blazing. 30 seconds to impact," Ensign Bora announced. Her hands were steady on the controls. 20 seconds, 10. "Brace for impact," Yuna ordered. The Iron Hana hit the Queen's flagship at full speed. The collision was tremendous. The reinforced bow of the destroyer cut through the organic hull like a knife through flesh. Metal screamed. The ship shook violently. Consoles exploded. Crew members were thrown from their stations. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power failed. But the ship held together, and when the shaking stopped, they were inside. Yuna grabbed her plasma rifle and headed for the breach. "Boarding party with me. Everyone else keep the ship operational. We need a way out when this is done." She led 50 Marines into the nightmare. The interior of the Krath flagship was unlike anything Yuna had ever seen. The walls were made of flesh. The floors pulsed with veins carrying green fluid. The air was thick with a smell that made her stomach turn. Strange lights glowed in the organic tissue, casting everything in a sickly yellow color. And the Krath were waiting. Warriors poured from the walls, emerging from hidden passages like insects from a hive. They screamed their clicking war cries and charged. "Open fire," Yuna shouted. The Marines formed a defensive line and unleashed a storm of plasma. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. Krath fell by the dozen, their bodies piling up in grotesque heaps, but more kept coming, always more. Lieutenant Dohan fought beside Yuna, his rifle firing with mechanical precision. "Captain, the Queen's chamber is 300 meters ahead, but we are losing people." Yuna knew he was right. For every 10 Krath they killed, 1 Marine fell. The numbers were not in their favor, but retreat was not an option. If they failed, the Queen would regroup and continue the assault on Velaris Prime. "Push forward," she ordered. "Everyone push forward." They fought their way through corridor after corridor. The resistance grew fiercer as they approached the Queen's chamber. Elite guards appeared, bigger and faster than the regular warriors. Marines died. Good people. Friends. But the survivors kept moving, stepping over the bodies of fallen enemies and comrades alike. Finally, they reached the throne room. It was a vast chamber, filled with pulsing organic structures and floating spores. At the center sat the Queen herself. She was enormous, easily 10 times the size of her warriors. Her body was bloated with eggs. A crown of horns rose from her head. Dozens of eyes covered her face, and they all turned to look at the humans as they entered. "You," the Queen hissed. Her voice was like nails on metal. "You come to my heart. You dare challenge me in my own body." Yuna stepped forward, her rifle raised. "I give you one chance. Surrender now and we will make your death quick." The Queen laughed. It was a horrible sound. "You are brave, little prey. I will give you that, but you cannot kill me. I am the swarm. I am eternal. I have lived for 10,000 years. I have consumed civilizations older than your entire species. You are nothing but meat." "We shall see," Yuna said. The Queen attacked. She was fast for something so large. Tentacles shot toward Yuna, acid dripping from their tips. Yuna dove to the side, firing as she rolled. The plasma bolt struck the Queen's hide but barely left a mark. The Marines spread out and opened fire from multiple angles. The Queen screamed in rage, her tentacles lashing out in every direction. Marines were caught and crushed. Others were sprayed with acid. The battle became desperate chaos. Dohan managed to reach Yuna's side. "Captain, our weapons are not powerful enough. We need something bigger." Yuna looked around the chamber. Her eyes fell on the organic structures connected to the Queen, power conduits, neural links, the things that connected her to the swarm. "If we cannot kill her directly, we cut her off," Yuna decided. "Target the conduits, destroy her connection to the hive." The surviving Marines shifted their fire. Plasma bolts slammed into the organic structures. They ruptured and burned. The Queen screamed as her links to the swarm were severed one by one. "No," the Queen shrieked. "You cannot do this. I am the mother. I am everything." Yuna walked toward the Queen, firing steadily. Each shot pushed the creature back. Each destroyed conduit weakened her further. The Queen's movements became sluggish. Her tentacles fell limp. Finally, Yuna stood directly in front of the ancient monster. "You asked why we came here," Yuna said. Her rifle was pointed at the Queen's largest eye. "You asked why we would die for strangers. I will tell you." The Queen stared at her with hatred. "Because that is what humans do. We protect people, even people we have never met, even at the cost of our own lives. That is what separates us from things like you." She pulled the trigger. The plasma bolt went straight through the Queen's brain. The massive body shuddered once, twice, and then collapsed. The eyes went dark. The tentacles went still. The swarm queen of the Krath was dead. Outside in the space above Velaris Prime, the remaining Krath ships went mad. Without their queen to guide them, they turned on each other, or fled into the void, or simply stopped functioning altogether. The battle was over. Yuna lowered her rifle and looked at what remained of her boarding party. 12 Marines out of 50. The price had been terrible. But the Novan were safe. The planet would survive. And that, in the end, was all that mattered. Captain to Iron Hana, she spoke into her communicator. Mission complete. The Queen is dead. Begin extraction. On the bridge of the Eternal Soul, Admiral Park received the news with quiet satisfaction. They had won. 1 week had passed since the Battle of Velaris Prime. The Krath swarm was broken. Most of their ships had fled into deep space, scattered and leaderless without their queen. The few that remained near the planet had been hunted down and destroyed by human patrol vessels. The threat was over. Now came the harder work, rebuilding. Ambassador Lyris walked through the ruins of her capital city. The destruction was everywhere. Collapsed buildings, burned homes, empty streets where children had once played. The cost of the invasion would take generations to recover from, but at least there would be generations to do the recovering. Human engineers walked beside Novan workers, helping to clear rubble and restore power. Human medical ships in orbit treated the wounded. Human supply vessels brought food, water, and medicine. They asked for nothing in return. Lyra still did not understand it. She found Admiral Park Tiho standing on a hill overlooking the reconstruction efforts. He was a tall man with gray in his hair and lines on his face that spoke of many years and many battles. He wore his uniform like a second skin, perfectly pressed despite the dust and smoke in the air. "Admiral," she greeted him. "Ambassador," he replied with a slight nod. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the work below. Novan and humans moving together, sharing tasks that neither could complete alone. "I have been trying to understand," Lyris finally said. "I have spent my entire career as a diplomat. I have negotiated with dozens of species. I have built alliances based on trade, mutual benefit, strategic advantage. Everything in the galaxy works on exchange. You give something, you get something." Admiral Park did not respond. He simply listened. "But you," Lyris continued, "you gave everything and asked for nothing. You came to our rescue. You sacrificed your ships, your soldiers. Your people died on our streets fighting for citizens they had never met. And when I ask your survivors why they did it, they all say the same thing." She turned to face him. "Because we called for help. Because it was the right thing to do. I do not understand this. My species has existed for 50,000 years, and we have never encountered anything like it." Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried the weight of someone who had thought about this question for a very long time. "A long time ago," he said, "my species was alone. We lived on a world that was constantly trying to kill us. The weather was violent. The animals were hungry. Even the plants could poison us. We learned very early that the only way to survive was to help each other." Lyris listened carefully. "A single human was weak," the Admiral continued. "We were slower than the predators that hunted us. We were weaker than the creatures we needed to kill for food. We had no claws, no fangs, no armor. By every measure, we should have gone extinct. But you did not. No, because we learned to cooperate. We formed tribes. We protected each other. When one of us was hurt, the others carried them. When one of us was hungry, the others shared their food. We survived not because we were individually strong, but because we refused to abandon each other." Admiral Park looked out at the reconstruction work below. "That lesson shaped everything we became. Our societies, our cultures, our values. We fight each other sometimes, yes. We have made terrible mistakes throughout our history, but at the core of what it means to be human is a simple idea. You do not leave people behind. You do not abandon the weak. When someone calls for help, you answer." Lyris considered his words. They were simple, but they carried profound meaning. "The other species," she said carefully, "they call you Deathworlders. They tell stories about humans to frighten their children. They say you are dangerous, violent, unpredictable. They avoid your ships and your colonies. All true, the Admiral admitted. Then why do I feel safer standing beside you than I have ever felt in my entire life? Admiral Park smiled slightly. It was a tired smile, the smile of someone who had seen too much but still found reasons to keep going. Because danger is not the same as evil, he said. Yes, we are dangerous. We come from a world that forged us into warriors. We can endure pain that would kill other species. We can survive wounds that should be fatal. We can fight long after any reasonable creature would have surrendered. But that does not mean we want to hurt people. He turned to face her fully. A weapon is dangerous. A storm is dangerous. A predator is dangerous. But none of those things are evil. They simply exist. What matters is purpose. A weapon can protect or destroy. A storm can devastate or bring life-giving rain. A predator can hunt the weak or guard the helpless. The Admiral's eyes were steady and honest. Humans choose to protect. We choose to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. That is why we came when you called. Not because we wanted to fight, but because someone needed to, and no one else would. Lyris felt something shift inside her. All her life, she had believed in peace through negotiation, through trade, through mutual benefit. She had believed that violence was always wrong, that there was never a reason to fight. But watching the Krath slaughter her people had shattered that belief. Sometimes, there were no words that could stop a predator. Sometimes, the only thing that could protect the innocent was something even more dangerous than the threat. My people will remember this, she said quietly. For as long as we exist, we will remember that humanity came when no one else would. You will have our friendship, our gratitude, and our alliance for all time. We do not require payment, Admiral Park said. I know, that is why I offer it freely. They shook hands, the human gesture of solidarity that Lyris had learned during her diplomatic training. It felt strange and new, but also right. Below them, a human marine was teaching a group of Novan children how to play a game with a round ball. The children were laughing. After days of horror and fear, they were actually laughing. The Marine, despite his injuries and exhaustion, was smiling as he showed them how to kick. Lyris recognized him. It was Lieutenant Jiho, the one who had led the rescue of her shelter. He had broken bones and burns covering half his body, but he was still down there, still helping, still giving. He should be in a medical bay, she said. Probably, Admiral Park agreed. But humans are stubborn, especially the Marines. Someone told him the children were scared, and he decided the best medicine for fear was play. The doctors have given up trying to get him to rest. Lyris watched the scene for a long moment. The children's laughter was the most beautiful sound she had heard in weeks. Perhaps, she said slowly, my people have been wrong about many things. We believed that avoiding conflict was wisdom. We believed that being peaceful meant being safe. We believed that the galaxy would protect us if we were kind enough. She shook her head. But kindness alone could not stop the Krath. Diplomacy could not save our children. In the end, the only thing that saved us was warriors who chose to use their strength for protection rather than conquest. There is no shame in being peaceful, Admiral Park said. Your people built a beautiful civilization. You created art and music and knowledge that will last for centuries. Those things have value. They are worth protecting. But who protects the protectors? Lyris asked. The Admiral looked at the sky, where human warships still orbited, watching for any sign of returning threat. We protect each other, he said. That is the point. That is what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. Today, we protected you. Tomorrow, perhaps you will protect someone else. That is how civilization survives, not by being strong alone, but by being strong together. Lyris nodded slowly. She understood now. The humans were not monsters. They were guardians. They had emerged from a world of death and decided to use their terrible strength to defend those who could not defend themselves. It was a beautiful thing, in its own strange way. "Admiral," she said, "I believe this is the beginning of a long friendship between our peoples." "I believe so too, Ambassador." They stood together on the hill, watching as humans and Novan worked side by side to rebuild what had been destroyed. The sun was setting on Velaris Prime, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. It was the first peaceful sunset the planet had seen in days. And somewhere in the ruins below, children were still laughing. The Deathworlders had come to bring death to those who threatened the innocent, but they had also brought hope, and in the end, hope was the most powerful weapon of all. The galaxy would remember this day. They would remember that when the Krath swarm came to consume a peaceful world, humanity answered the call. They would remember the sacrifice of those who died and the courage of those who fought. And perhaps, just perhaps, the next time someone sent a desperate cry for help into the void, others would answer too. Because the humans had shown them the way. Not through fear. Through example.